Meredith, hey, congratulations on your new film, Seagrass.
Thank you so much. And
I
thank you for
apologize.
having me.
I apologize. I missed you folks at the Santa Barbara International Film Festival just recently, and I heard you guys had a splendid time there.
Yes, it was so much fun. Santa Barbara is so beautiful and the festival was great. So yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's always good to show it to an audience and get the whole cast and crew to reunite for a production like this.
Yeah, exactly. I think the last time we all reunited was at TIFF, and so it's been several months since so many people were able to come. So it was amazing to have people there.
So Meredith, I have to ask is where the original idea came from for Seagrass?
Yeah, so the original idea for Seagrass, well, it came from really wanting to capture a certain theme, which is the theme of uncertainty. And I wanted that to kind of express itself in many different ways in the film. So, for those who haven't seen the film yet, it's following a Japanese Canadian woman who has recently lost her mother. And so she has taken her family to the self-development retreat to work on her marriage. And we follow her and the two daughters, of course. And yeah, I think that we're really seeing how this sense of uncertainty is coming up for the mother, but as well as the two daughters. And they're all experiencing it in different ways throughout the film.
Was it hard to craft the characters for this film in terms of the fa family dynamic? Because it seems like mental health is something that is hard to navigate for
Yeah.
characters
For what? What was that?
for these characters.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that they're all struggling in their own ways. They're going through a very challenging time, and especially the youngest, who was played by Remy Martellers. The character's name is Emmy. She was only 6 when she was playing that character, but I think what's happening for this young character, she's going through some very profound changes and really in many ways having an existential crisis. I would say. So yeah, it is a lot to navigate. And in terms of crafting it in the writing, I didn't find it too challenging. It was just, a lot of chipping away very slowly at what I wanted to tell. And then of course working with the actors. I was so grateful because they were all so amazing and they really truly understood what was happening for the characters.
So how do you balance the time between each of the characters? Because because they all have their own struggles, but you're talking about not three because I want to include the husbands four
Yeah.
into this storyline.
Yeah, I mean, in my head, I was like, the three female characters are going to be more central, but in the end, Luke Roberts' character, or Luke Roberts, who played Steve, he got quite a bit of screen time, and I think his character is so memorable that he did have quite a big impact on the film. But how I balanced it was just, you know, being intuitive, of course, about what felt right when we needed to kind of have more time with someone else or not, and going off of what felt right, whether that was in the writing process or in the edit. But also, I think just kind of really trying to lay out in the writing process, like, okay, when are people going through their shifts, and trying to time it a little bit without it feeling too contrived, of course.
Now, of course, th this story not only tackled, the issue of mental health, you also tackled other type of issues too, such as, heritage, a little bit of racism, all that. Why did you feel it was necessary to include that also into the conversation of the story?
Yeah, so as I was delving into Judith's character, I knew that she is going through an identity crisis of sorts, that she's going through, questioning her identity as a wife and a mother, and it only made sense to me to include her racial identity as well. Being Japanese Canadian myself, it's a story that's very something that I understand really well. And although this film is certainly not autobiographical in any way, I would say that the main thing that I bring in from my own life is this Japanese Canadian identity, which I think, of course, is also relatable to Japanese Americans. Um, so yeah, with Judith, I just think it is such a specific identity, and the trauma from what happened in the 1940s, I think has had a trickle down effect in further generations. And that was something I was really interested in exploring because it's been not really touched on a lot in films. You know, you might see films or documentaries that center specifically about the incarceration of Japanese Canadians and Americans, but less so about how that impacted later generations.
As someone who wrote the story, um, did you experience anything of the sorts of what these characters went through yourself?
I mean, of course. I mean, in many ways, I think being a woman, being Japanese Canadian, being mixed race, of course, there's different things that come up. Um, and yeah, absolutely, in many different ways for sure.
I found it fascinating that I want to touch upon a character that I want to say is unseen throughout the entire movie, the mother, the grandmother, and
Yeah.
you could feel the presence through that. Um, tell can you explain how you want that character, well, sort of that character to
Yeah.
be present in the entire film in one form or another?
Absolutely. And I think you're completely right. The grandmother is a character in the film. You just never see her. Um, Hi, Kat. Um, Yeah, because I think that this really is a story about three generations. It's about the grandmother's generation, it's about Judith, the main character's generation, and it's about the two children and their generation, which is exactly why I wanted to set it in the 90s specifically as well, because, you know, of course, someone who would be Judith's age at that time with young kids, that would be in the 90s if her parents went through everything that happened in the 40s. So yeah, I really wanted the grandmother's presence to sort of be almost, you know, haunting them and not necessarily literally, but certainly potentially literally. Um, but also in the sense that, you know, our past and these questions that we have, they are kind of a part of what makes up our present.
Now, I've seen Allie in many films before, and this film you really pushed her to the limits of showing her acting range because you got her into more dramatic scenes. You got her into singing and dancing
Yeah.
all in one film. Tell us about working with her and how did you basically draw the best out of her in terms of her acting chops?
Yeah, Ali Maki is incredible. And when, you know, we first worked together, just in an initial meeting, she really blew me away because I hadn't seen her dramatic acting as much. I'd seen her comedic acting, but she was just incredible, and I knew she was the right person and the one who had to play this role. And it was really beautiful because our first conversation that we had, we discussed the character, and we realized we had so many similarities in our family stories. And also that her mother's name is Judith, which is the character's name. So it just felt meant to be. And, you know, I didn't really feel that I had to draw anything out of her. I think I just, you know, working with her, I just wanted to support her in the best ways that I could, just like any of the other actors. And I think she just really got it. And, you know, it's just wonderful to be able to see this other side of her incredible acting chops. So yeah, it was a lot of fun working with her.
And also kudos to bringing the two children. I know you work with them fairly young, and young children is actually very hard to work with. So, how did you basically work with them, and how did you also discover them?
Yes. So our Canadian casting directors, Chris Waz and Kara Ide, found them. They literally wrote to every single Canadian kids acting school in the country to find them. And we were down to the wire. Like we didn't find both of them as a pair until a week and a half before shooting. So I was panicking that we didn't have two of our leads. But in the end, you know, Naya's tape came in. I'd already seen Remy's, and then I was able to cast Remy because, you know, to pair them as sisters for ages and whatnot. So yeah, we found them. And honestly, it wasn't even that hard working with them at all. Like they're so incredible, so naturally gifted. Um, you know, I think it can definitely be challenging working with kids, but in the case of Seagrass, it was very easy because they're just that good. So I can't take any credit for the incredible performances that they brought. But I think just like everyone else, working with kids is the same in the sense that every actor needs something very different, and a 6-year-old needs something different from the director. They need a different type of direction, and so I was just trying the whole time to kind of find my way to help them both the best that I could as a director.
On the basis of a film like this, location scouting is very important. Did you always sought out a specific location by the coast, or you had to mix locations in order for to get this film done?
Like, were they both actually on the coast?
Yeah.
Yes, they were. So there's two, I guess, main locations. The retreat, which is right on the water, on Gabriola Island. And the film is set on a fictional island in British Columbia, but this was shot on Gabriola Island, at a retreat center. And then a lot of the outdoor kind of waves crashing and the cave were all shot in Tofino and Ucluelet.
Hmm.
So yeah, those were all shot near the water. And the locations were something that I was worried about a year before shooting. So I actually went with the director of photography, Norm Lee, and we went searching a year before shooting and at least found those two locations because they're very challenging, especially at the height of summer on not a massive budget. Like you kind of need to lock those in. So yeah, I'm so fortunate that we found those two fantastic places to shoot.
Now, I don't want to delve into spoilers, but one of the things that I was actually very impressed with is I want to say the scenes with the tides. How challenging was that? Because I do have to admit, it looks cold.
You have no idea how challenging it was, but I will say, no one was ever in actual ocean water.
Hmm.
So, without giving any spoilers away, there's definitely some swimming scenes in the film, but no one was actually ever in the ocean. So it was really a mixture of, builds and a little bit of like semi-minor VFX. I think there was one sort of more complex shot, and then the rest of it was cheated a little bit, so it was okay.
So so was that the most challenging part of this film, or there were more challenging areas when you were directing this film?
That was something that I would say was most challenging in my head, at least. Prior to shooting, it was what I was most worried about. Because, the cave that we found in Rosie Bay, and this isn't a spoiler because really there's this seaside cave that we see at the beginning that's rumored to be haunted, and all these kids kind of crowd around it, and the tides come in, and literally at the location, um, you have a 3 hour window to shoot there, and then the tide comes in and you get trapped if you don't get out of there. Fortunately, everything was totally fine, but with a whole bunch of kids, we're like, how do we shoot this stuff? And the kids are going inside of the empty cave. And I think 2 months before shooting, because of the winter tides, we realized that the cave that had previously been completely sandy was like full of like, deep pools of water. And fortunately, just before shooting, the tides fixed it naturally and we were able to shoot there. So I would say it was most stressful in the sense of like just planning and figuring it out, but it all worked out in the end.
Cinematography wise, could you tell me about the color palettes chosen for a film like this? Because it certainly does set the mood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when we were working with the colorist Dave Tomiak, we did a lot of really in-depth work, and he was so great because he just really helped us to push it bit by bit. And in the end, we found quite a vibrant palette. And I'm really glad that we did because there's something that just feels so nostalgic about the color palette and kind of contrasting to what the characters are going through. Because I think, there's this very lively color palette, and yet they're all kind of going through these internal struggles. So yeah, it's something that we really worked hard with Dave at to just find the right balance for the film.
Most excellent. And you could correct me if I'm wrong. I understand this is your feature film directorial debut
That is-
after doing many shorts. How was that experience for yourself?
A completely new, big, intimidating challenge. it was of course challenging, and it stretched me, and it was also exhilarating and so fulfilling. It was like everything all at once. I highly recommend it to anyone who has done a few shorts and wants to dive in. I think it will always be like a bit of a shock, just how intense it is and everything. But it was a really beautiful experience, and I feel very lucky to even been able to make my feature. So
So does that mean you'll be doing more features down the road after this?
I I certainly hope so. Yeah. I just need to write one and figure out how to get the money for it.
Well, that's always the enjoyment of indie filmmaking, and Seagrass is one of those better ones out there. Especially the fact that you got into both TIFF and Santa Barbara, the two most prestigious film festivals. So that says a lot about this film.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
So, Meredith, we really appreciate you carrying this conversation with us, and once again, congratulations for talking to us for Seagrass.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.